Hello everybody, and welcome to the LJL officially unofficial podcast, season 3, episode 60. Me, MaskedSwan, Alex, Lexi. I go by many names, but that's me over here. The man, always in the middle, because that's how we do things here. It's Sam Initialise. Have good side. Hello, this side. Welcome. How are you, mate?
I am doing very well. I'm glad to be back on this.
Yeah,
because it's been a couple of weeks because we've all been ridiculously busy, and none of us have actually been at a PC for longer than what it feels like, about 30 minutes. I played 2 solo queue games earlier today. Felt like the first time I played, League of Legends or any game outside of the hours about 1 a.m. for the last month. It's really nice to be back and doing this, and it's been really lovely. Very busy. Had a couple LEC weekends and stuff, which were very, very exciting. Did them alongside Nymaera, which was an amazing thing to do. And so it's been really, really cool to do some amazing stuff in terms of professionally and big goals set in life, right? But at the same time, there's sort of oh my god, I could use a break soon because it's coming towards the end of the split, and I'm very happy to be going a little hard right now. But I'm quite looking forward to a little downtime once things have cooled off.
Am I getting some deja vu? Didn't you, Nymaera, go through a lot of these similar things this time last year in a way?
Well, this is spring. In spring, this was, I was like, yeah. Now, the thing is, we're not naive. And also, hi, I'm Nymaera. I'm here.
Hello.
Hi, that's great. But, we're not naive. It's pretty obvious this shit's going to happen. When you start seeing a schedule, you're like, it's a lot of work. But, it's part of the job, particularly at this point as well. It's one of the I'm not going to say the worst parts, but it's definitely one of the more concerning parts, I suppose, where, that that work is coming, but you just got to do it. It's very important for your momentum and as a craftsman to be able to kind of use that rolling momentum and use it to make a good first impression, which I think we've done. So yeah, what have I done over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, what have you been up to, mate?
So about 2 weeks ago now, had one of my first casting weekends this split in the LEC, and that was with which way am I pointing? That way. Yeah. I was with this guy. Then we did a couple of games there. That was really cool. And then I hopped back home to the UK and hung around London for a bit. Went back home and I did that. Met you, of course.
Yeah, we actually got to hang out for a few hours.
I didn't get to see Lexi when I was back. I'm a bit jealous.
Anyway, I did that, and then a week and a half later, basically jetted back, flew back the day before my cast, and did another set with Sam, and then we're back here. So managed to get some social time and some break time. It felt like the first break I've had in 2.5 years. It's been a long time coming. So that was really cool. And then I've also managed to finally get back and do some LJL stuff. I did all 4 games in the last game day, which was...
Yeah, you did that with me. You and me were on the desk and casting. We chewed it up like old times.
That was cool. And then we had the most eventful day in LJL regular season history that I can think of. So
we'll get into that.
We will.
That happened. Yep, so that's kind of what I've been doing recently, and what we're going to be chatting about, I suppose.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be far more of a recap, kind of catch up with what's happening, and then set kind of the final week. We've got a few races actually starting to wrap up at this point, which we've really not talked about, because I guess the last time we had a podcast, we were halfway through, so it was far more of a, ooh, let's see where people go. Now we're we're through 2.5 round robins now. We're at the final 3 games, so there's a lot to go on. For myself, to have a moment of for me time, what have I been up to? Can't say too much in a weird way, but at the same time, I'm in limbo, ladies and gentlemen. So it's fine.
It's weird.
Except a tweet to go out, and if I post that, I would really appreciate if people like and retweet that, and maybe send good messages and positive vibe. But that will probably
people in chat. That means you are people. Yes. Go like and retweet that tweet. That will be very important. It's a bit like when we say, subscribe, give 5 stars to the podcast, all this one. This is your next challenge. Interact with the people on the podcast. Mind blowing, I know.
Crazy. No one's ever done that before, by the way.
Well, we had that one. We had the guy who did actually ask a question around MSI time, and then I completely ignored them. An absolute dummy.
So the reason people don't interact is not because they don't interact, it's because we don't see them interacting, because actually we are the dumbasses. Is that what you're telling me, Lexi?
I mean, there was always that possibility. There was always a possibility of this, mate. We're a fan-run project. We've been doing this for 3 years, and things sometimes fall through the cracks. Like,
Jeez, we're on our 3rd year. That's stressing me out. That's wild.
Right? See, it's not as like, oh, we're just some spring chickens here. Like, nah, we have to do a lot.
Back in my day, this man named Seros played Heimerdinger in the mid lane.
I mean, we did have genuine conversations of him warping meta drafts and stuff because you're playing in Brand.
So this
Palmer's
is really
big timer.
So I was watching NA Academy yesterday.
Right, okay, I can see the similarity here.
Yeah, well, someone messaged me on Twitch, and I was like, hey, I know it's been a long time, but I remember watching that 5-game series where for some reason, Heimerdinger was banned all 5 games, and I remember watching you cast back then, and it's great seeing you doing so well. I'm like, that would have been 2020 summer.
Yep.
That would have been like 2020 summer. I'm like, credit to you. You remember me after all that time? You remember our little broadcast? That's really cool. And obviously I went through like, by the way, that's the Seros thing. We were glad to have him in the league. That was, yeah, and he really did pull off those drafts. But really funny you mentioned that, because literally yesterday someone messaged me about that era. That was really cool.
That is so dope. I mean, that we do get the benefit of like, was Joshi? No, we were competing with Joshi in 2020.
So I think summer
he came on. He came and he joined forces with us in summer.
Was it forces in summer? Spring, we were on our own as the unproven entity, and now we are the designated experts. So I mean, that's what you do, ladies and gentlemen. You just do something for long enough, you might be called the LJL expert.
Yeah. Don't specify anything at all. You know, if you do something long enough, then maybe they just add LJL in front of it, and then you're the expert of it. That's just how it happens.
That's what other people do
in front of like a couple 100,000 people on international broadcasts. So that one helps.
That helps. I'm yet to have my one.
I'm still very.
I've shouted you out.
No. Sorry. I mean, I haven't been shouted out on a world stage like Nymaera.
No, I managed European.
I thought the second time. I thought at Worlds all of us were.
Yeah, we all were on Worlds.
MSI, it was me because Shox was talking.
I remember Sam getting called out because Sam he was just like, "Wait a moment, what?"
But okay,
it doesn't matter. But I mean, who knows? Maybe next time.
Let's go work
on the broadcast. That's the way that we end up fixing this.
Honestly, yeah. And that's what we'd all want. Just give us the LJL games, people. We'll do it. Honestly, I would even host those games for free just to be like, I'm on Worlds. Because then I can put that on my CV and then go to other places and be like, see, I'm legit. Yeah. Like they don't realize.
Especially with plans as well, when you've got a lot of people coming from major regions who don't have the hands-on time of
they can't. Those minor regions. There's only so many hours in a day.
To an extent, and also just like there's a thing about time efficiency where if you're not keeping up with it mid-season, preparing for an event means you are going to have casters who actually just don't know.
In all fairness, not everybody is Emily Rand.
Yeah, you've got
Emily and Karen Moser.
And those two,
LC as well, yes.
They do an inhuman amount of work, and they are incredibly talented. But I'm still a little worried for them. Like, but even then, like Kelsey Moser before MSI was one of the few people that messaged me about the event, and was like, "Hey, which games should I watch for the LJL?"
Yeah,
like, sweet, yeah, I'll give you this list of games. That's a really good way to prep, by the way.
Yeah,
and especially if anyone ends up coming by this VOD and they're working international events or something like E-Masters later. Go find someone that knows that region, and then just ask them, hey, you know, if you have to give me like 3, 4, 5 VODs to watch out of the host of them, which ones should I watch? I did that for LPL midway through this split. I was like, hey, Orcs, can you give me like some series to watch? Like, I want to catch up. And it's like, these are the ones which are good. That's a really good way to help your prep. Bit of a tangent, important stuff.
Okay, well, we'll tell you what. Let's finish this up, and then someone can clip it and ship it, so when it comes around to be valuable for the LJL, any of the 3 people on your screen, Initialise, Nymaera, MaskedSwan, we will do it for you. Hell, anybody else in the crew, you can get into the Discord and find out. For the VCS, Carrix, Milky Cereal, Yulway, Mabinogi, all of those guys will give you incredible, and girls for that matter, will give you incredible info for the VCS, and tell you what, they are looking really scary, so do get your info on those teams.
And the CBLOL guys. Yes!
Yeah, Rudude. Of course, like Random Minion Caster, they do incredible work on that. I'm probably forgetting a couple names there, but those are some amazing people.
And there's also like some folks have started up an LLA broadcast as well.
Yes.
So
they are brand new, but I'm sure they seem very passionate on their broadcast.
Yeah, but there's J-Real, who's obviously done a lot of hosting for us over there. Temporal's done some stuff. Recollect's done some stuff for them. So yeah, there's a whole load of people over there that are also. I can't remember if I've caught everyone in that, but there's a lot of people who are around, which So yeah, anyway, effectively, there are people out there that can help you with your preps. You're not starting from scratch, and it makes your life a lot easier and probably a lot more correct as well. So,
it's far more that one,
yeah.
Alex. It's
Yeah, and
far
like,
more that.
and then,
Because you know what gets under our craw? When you mispronounce the same player's name over and over again. No. It gets worse. When you say a lie about a player and pass it off as complete fact.
yeah, it's a bit difficult sometimes when you're like, hey, actually, this player's done XYZ in their career, and
What's worse is when I like the
you're not
caster as a
portrayed correctly.
personality. That's what fucks me.
Well, that's what I'm like. If it's very difficult to prep for all these teams, right? But yeah, this is a larger conversation about how sometimes everything that's being said on international broadcast, because the prep isn't always there, can get a little bit tricky.
But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, we said this was going to be a recap episode, so I guess we're truly recapping everything on our
everything,
plate.
yeah.
But with that said, last time we podcasted, it was about halfway through the split.
Just after, something like that. It was pretty close.
While I quickly actually get this prepared, because I didn't actually prepare myself in all fairness, can one of you gentlemen quickly run through the standings just while I...
Yeah, so if you check, I've snipped the picture for you in the podcast document.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you.
I'm way ahead of you, buddy. But as it stands, we have 2 teams tied for first, but due to the way head-to-heads work at the minute, it will be Sengoku Gaming who are first, with DFM tied with them at 15-2. There's a little bit of drama around that, considering their last match they played in the best of round. We'll get on to that one later, but that's the 2 teams that are well and truly ahead of everybody else in the damn league. Behind them in third are the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks Gaming at 13-4, and they are kind of the best of the rest. And then we have the middle of the pack. Alex?
Yeah, so we have CJ and Russell Jester, who are kind of like really brawling it out at 7 and 10. They, on occasion, look really, really good. On other occasions, look completely lost. There have been a couple of games where they've been in either incredible winning situations or lost, or just the opposite, and managed to just control their own fate by snatching a defeat from the jaws of victory. And then below them, you have Axis and Burning Core, who are fighting off for the last playoff spot. They're both at 5 and 12. And I don't think we expected to see Burning Core quite there, but they are, and now they have to fight for their lives. Axis, on the other side of it, should probably have been 1 win ahead, but they might have taken a loss to our last place team, and we'll talk about that one as well, as V3 are not on 0 and 39 loss streak anymore. They picked up a fucking win!
They got the win!
A 1-16
for them.
They're 1-16. They're still solid last place. How many days have we got left? We don't have enough for them to get out of last place.
No, not
they
at
are going to be
all.
sat down there, but they've got something. 1-16. It's something, right?
I mean, the thing is, they broke the record first for League, but they didn't want to break the esport record.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right?
So, kind of recapping on that, this is something which I was kind of putting on my Twitter. And by the way, this is one of the moments which kind of gave me not quite an ego trip, but kind of like more like a reality check, where I made one tweet and someone made it into a news article, and I was like, okay, because V3 had broken the all-time League of Legends professional loss streak record, which was set by the Victors of LCS Infamy.
LJL, yeah.
Infamy. So that's the Russian and Commonwealth of Independent States league, which is of course on hiatus. This was like their PR move / protest roster, where they kind of had an all-female roster, basically because they couldn't sell their spot when they wanted to, so they had no money to hire a roster, so they was like, okay, what do we do with this? Anyway, that happened, and they lost pretty much all of the games in that year. But the thing is, with the LJL, we have a triple round robin, so we have more games in the year, and V3 had 0-3 from last year in summer playoffs. They were at 0-3 there, so actually, through a completely winless spring at 0-21, and then the 0-3 from that year beforehand, they came into summer with like 0-24, and then they went 0-16 to bring it up to 0-39 as like the all-time. Oh, sorry, 0-15 rather, like the all-time League of Legends loss streak record for a professional team. It was absolutely ridiculous. But they don't beat the Shanghai Dragons, which are the overall professional
Esports.
sports, not even esports, well, including esports and sports,
Wow.
the all-time loss streak, like globally for any professional team, and that was 0-42, I believe.
Right. Okay.
And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
important to note, of course, that Shanghai Dragons after that went on to win the Overwatch League. So they revamped
Well,
and became back as
V3
one of the
did
strongest
opposite.
teams in the league. So it was
Yeah,
pretty
V3 went
insane.
from
Of
winning
course,
to losing, and
yeah. I mean, like the roster like changed entirely and lots of
oh
other stuff.
yeah.
But yeah, it was a big one for V3. And again, we'll get onto it, I'm sure, later, but it's really important to note this is not a roster that seems like a 0-39 team. They were so close to winning so many games. Like, don't get me wrong, they weren't a playoff caliber team, but they weren't a winless team. They really weren't.
No, and the fact that they're going to have this, honestly, a stain in history, is not great.
Yeah.
In all fairness,
Should
because we might as well just start talking
Let's
about
say,
this.
like, we've
honestly
got
speaking.
we have a couple of main
Because-
topics. This is one of them. We're already on it anyway. Should we start with this?
Yeah, let's keep going because honestly speaking, V3 Esports, they had 2 to 3 opportunities for sure. I very much remember the Axis match in their first round robin where UGO is playing Swain. I can't remember if that's the first round robin or second round robin in all fairness.
Second, wasn't it? The Swain game.
Uh,
First game of the.
It was this
second round
summer.
one.
It was this summer. Where basically they had that almost unwin, like they had pulled it into a spot where they should very much win this game, and then they played a Baron fight, absolutely threw it there, and it was like, oh, that was like heartbreaker after heartbreaker. I remember there was one spring game where it looked like I can't remember who it was, but it felt like they were actually in a reasonable spot. But reasonable spots never seem to be much for V3 Esports, and a lot honestly, you could, this is where. When you tell a person, there is a difference between casual solo queue and professional play. This is why this is not the same game when you go between one and the other, because good players mechanically does not equal a good team. And V3 Esports is a perfect example of this, but it's because they got beat by teams and just better team play 9 out of 10 occasions.
Yeah,
that's really.
And then when you've actually also got like a league that is now full of pretty decent mechanical players. I don't look at teams and go, yeah, there's no one on this team that can play to a decent level.
Well, one player, but I'll always say that.
I mean, sure, but I mean, like even then, like we look around the league and we go, there is talent on this team, right? I don't go and say, oh yeah.
Well, honestly speaking, V3 Esports was like almost across the board. I won't say every player, but almost across the board, the kind of worst in their role.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Maybe you can argue that some badly performing members in Burning Core are the
moments,
worst ones with that. But I mean, the thing for me is like I really want to hit on what Lexi said again, because that's something which I really pointed out in I think it was second round robin. There was a game between I think it was Hawks and Axis this one, but Axis and V3 shared this similarity where this was a Callista game, and it was a game where like just all the resources came down bot. And because it's Callista in the game, right? That's what happens. But V3, sorry, I think that was Axis. Axis. Like they try and play around bot side, and the idea is fine, but like the execution like isn't there, or some of the fundamentals are missing, and they'd be like missing out on a play by half a wave, or like they wouldn't like the jungle wasn't clearing well enough, or they wouldn't get down towards bot side, and like or something like that.
On the right marker.
And one thing I noticed when V3 lost this week again. Wait, was this the DFM game they lost against? Or
they got rolled by DFM.
No, Rascal Jester got absolutely stomped by DFM.
But this is V3. V3, who you placed? It might have been against.
I'll double check now. So the last loss V3 had, because obviously
no, it was the DFM game. Yeah, because that's the one I was casting. So it was that last game. Because I remember this because like I remember things I cast. Funnily enough.
Holy shit.
This was like a so this would have been something like effectively Washadai looks for like one all-in a Gwen Jax matchup, but like he's doing it on a point where both bot lanes have reset, and whenever bot lane resets, if they both reset at the same time, well, either way, right? When you know enemy bot lanes reset, you know that the support has a chance to do something on the map. Depending on the way they stay at a bot lane, particularly if it's slow pushing back towards enemy bot, and they know that the AD carry is going to be able to safely pick up farm. You can then send like your support to top lane or into the enemy jungle around bot side to set up a vision for an objective. On the whole, when bot lane resets, something happens most of the time. That's like your Hillisang, what's he gonna smoke today and do? Kind of moment. And this is one moment where it's just so simple. It's not even particularly crazy. Oh, this would have been the Hawks game. Actually thinking about it.
Yeah, seeing Hawks is the more recent one. Like nothing. Where Hawks.
Yeah. This would have been
Hawks V3.
So there was Hawks
V3.
V3, and then the one before that was
Similar.
DFM V3, where we saw Udapon on Zeri do despicable things with
Yeah,
Yaha
yeah,
on
yeah.
Lissandra.
Yeah, so the Hawks game is the one where nothing happened for the first 15 minutes, and I was actually losing my mind as the host that
Yeah.
game. And it was just, and the thing is, it was Hawks just getting incremental advantages through just simply playing their waves better, like you were
I know
saying,
what
Alex. This is where they got their heralds,
because-
remember, and they just stacked the waves and just
Because
got
Leaguepedia
things.
hadn't updated, that's why I could.
Yeah. I'm on GOL, so I've got
GOL,
them
my
up for you.
dude. Game
I'll
of
send you the
Legends,
link.
ladies and
It's actually so
gentlemen.
annoying.
We'll talk about Leaguepedia. We'll give it
Because
a little moment, I think.
We will have to talk about that because actually that's huge
It's a
to what we
huge
do as a
one.
broadcast. But anyway, with this thing. So basically, it was just like, it's really simple. I was just sat there, I was calling out, and I'm like, okay, both bot lanes have reset. Why are you all in now? What's happening with that? And then they just die. And it's just like, there are some fundamentals to our bottom teams which just aren't there. And V3, they have some stuff in the early game, right? Where they're able to like make a set play, where they practice this thing, but they don't actually understand the fundamentals which hold up the game in terms of like, bot lane resets, they can do this. Mid lane pushes in on this, they can do XYZ with a jungler. Wave Crash does this. It's very simple things. And they're just not quite there. And they have some things in check, but you can just tell they're so far behind us, like, in terms of pro understanding. They are being beaten by teams. Extended Point, I know it's went on for a while, but, like, basically just hammering on the specifics of what Lexi was saying.
Yeah.
And
Final note on this one. That game was not a long game. It was a slow game,
No,
but it was
it
over in
wasn't.
26 minutes. Like
Yeah.
it was like cool, and then we win. Like that was it. And and a lot of that is off what Al was saying. It's like, look, you
Well,
are just
that's
missing your
because, like-
timers and your positioning marks by 10 to 30 seconds.
And also in that game, V3 needed to do something early because they were always going to lose
had
big
to.
team fights later. And I was just sat there because I was casting with Viet for Crow, and I'm sat there. I'm like, we ended up talking about how Crow was like actually used to be a part of a circus act.
yeah, he
like,
left
contortionism.
university. That was
Like went to do contortionism and can fit himself into a suitcase. I'm like, holy shit, that's so interesting. It's more interesting what's happening on the screen. Because
yeah.
what happened was the Hawks got ahead and they're like, wait, we don't have to do anything now, do we? And they didn't do anything and won. Because they knew they just passively outscaled. There was no way they were going to lose. I was just out of like, V3, come on. They just didn't have that, again, they didn't have like that holistic understanding of what was happening. It's sad. Yeah.
V3 for me felt like they finally found where they've almost left out of Academy. Like all that time ago. It feels like they finally... Bless you, Alex, by the way. It feels like...
For that, so audio listeners didn't have to deal with
I heard you, but you were in the other room, so
Yeah,
but
that's
for me,
helpful.
I feel like V3 Esports have kind of... They finally... Like, they've gotten to that stage where it's almost feel like that's the level they were coming out of Academy in. It's taken dress code this long to kind of reach the level where Marble was and the whole team's cohesion. Because in Academy, they were making a lot of these plays and they were far more just on it and more confident. It seems like they've either found their confidence or when you have nothing to lose, you'll start playing your best because you've played with no fear, which is... potentially why we suddenly saw a win. And it was also, let's talk about that win just a tiny bit. It was actually a convincing win for V3 versus Axis, which is something that hasn't really been covered by a lot of the publications. They're just kind of like grabbing Alex's tweet and going, they won a game. It's like, no. You're missing the context for that because Twitter only has so many characters, people. You should go and watch the game for 5 minutes. Just watch one of the highlights in LJL, who... Honestly, whoever runs that Twitter account, YouTube account, you are a star.
Yes, they
by the
help a
way.
lot. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Just watch that because it shows there's a lot of good stuff. A lot of stuff that Alex was saying and Sam was saying, and even I was been saying about we want to see this from V3 and a lot of the other games. And even though they dropped the ball again against Hawks right after, there was some good that came out of that match versus Axis. They felt more confident, and hopefully, maybe some of these players will get to stick around in the LJL next season. And we'll get to see more growth from them because I'd be really sad to see all of them get kicked to the side.
and like this is the thing with this roster is it is full of pretty much rookies. Yes, Unica and Hugo have, or Yujo, he's asked us to change this to how he pronounces it so many
I
times.
swear.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, the mid laner for V3.
That
They
guy.
have had some time on stage, but they both came in as subs in rosters that weren't particularly successful and weren't starters or with teams for like whole splits, pretty much even. So you got a team of rookies who lost their superstar to another team, who've had to try and rebuild, and they're into a league that is actually pretty high level now in a lot of ways. They were set up to have a very difficult time. And I think that's not entirely fair on a lot of these players, and I think it's a real representation of the ceilings of a lot of these players. But if you want to grow players like this, you need to look at teams like I don't know, Cloud9, G2, T1. There you go. Great example of how you bring in rookies is you have veterans and good coaching staff around you to slot in and learn to play the game. And you have to kind of build up from, okay, here's the things we're going to have you playing right now. And then you can bring in some more and some more and some more. And then you end up with players like Zeus and Ona and you know, and Kuma Yusi, who are phenomenal players now, right? But they were surrounded by Faker, of all people, Carrier, and you look in the back room, it's like Bengi, been playing for forever, and like all these incredible other like coaches and players from other esports who are around and about and giving you support. And you could say the same with G2 with Flack and stuff and Targamas.
Yeah, for
Say
sure.
the same with Cloud9 with like Berserker and that kind of thing. And there's a number of other teams you could point towards, but there Evil Geniuses, even better. Danny and Jojo, right? There is a formula.
I'll be honest, mate. For fuck's sake, DFM last year, Aria. There was a glow up for Aria.
You evolved a lot. Yep.
And there's that kind of deal that you need to come into a system where you have got players who are a bit more veteran that you can learn from and can learn how to be a competitive League of Legends player at the top end. That is a very different thing to being a good League of Legends player. That's not the same.
Which is a perfect segue into our next two teams, because we're going from the very bottom to the fucking top, lads, because we have to do this. DFM and Sengoku Gaming.
Wild.
Right, so first off, they've played all three of their matches. Yes. Sengoku, because of how things went, we'll talk about it in a second, lads. They have the head-to-head, meaning that while they are tied first in the Juggernaut match, currently the team that will get side selection, assuming everybody wins out here and there's nothing upset, which is what everybody's assuming, just putting it out there, or at least I'm assuming, I'll talk for myself at least. Then the head-to-head, it means Sengoku will actually be technically first, which means they get side selection, and normally the side-selecting team typically wins the Juggernaut match. Typically, not always. Sengoku already know how this script goes when they should technically win, and then they didn't. Oh yeah, that was spring. Actually, no, they weren't first in spring, were they, all that time ago?
No, I think first place is always second Juggernaut match, you're right.
So, okay, well then, that's a really important thing to potentially win. But gentlemen, let's talk about the absolute catastrophe that was Detonation Focus Me versus Sengoku Gaming. Because ultimately, history shows Sengoku Gaming won. But that's not really how it went, was it? Who wants to take this start?
So, I can go on this one because
it's a tale of two parts.
Yeah. So so something happened on the day of that game where earlier in the day there was actually an LCK game where there was a support who died in a team fight and immediately respawned. And everyone paused and was like, hang on a second. It's a bit weird. What's happened there?
Instant respawn, ladies and gentlemen.
So like they died and they immediately appeared on the fountain. Like no
death time.
No death time or anything like that. So that was pretty crazy. But effectively, they investigated it and the teams did not opt for a remake. So they were sat there and was like, look, whatever, let's go on with it. That's fine. Now, that didn't affect the game, but it was still like this is super weird. And Casual tweeted about it, so it got a lot of traction to it. Thing is, that was not nearly the most important instance of that bug which happened that day. Because later on, we had Detonation Focus Me versus Sengoku Gaming. And DFM...
Game of the week, match of the week, everything.
Yeah, last game of the day for the LJL as well, I believe it was. Yeah, it was the last one.
Yeah, it was so much important on it.
And the game starts, and Harp has an absolute blinder of a game. He's playing Morgana in that first game.
By the way, like, Random Minion Caster and Echo KO for our broadcast were killing it on that broadcast.
It was a great game.
Which,
please
continue.
But yeah, Harp had like a stunning game. He was flash binding with like flash predicts as well. So he'd like flash, force the enemy to flash, and then like tag them at the end of their flash. And DFM, but on the whole, just kind of outplaying and outlaning to the point where like Jet got hit. Like he was playing Echo, he pulled out Echo, and he got hit like binding like midway through his jump, and he was like, and actually there's a point where you see Jet disconnected, and we were like, ooh, what's happening here? Because what happened was the instant respawn bug happens again, and I believe it's actually. I think it might have been Poppy. Was it DFM that had Poppy that game? Or
no, it was once was on Poppy and had a horrible
once
game
had Poppy. And what ended up happening was he ended up instantly respawning after DFM were at 10,000 gold in the lead. Huge advantage. I think they'd taken Baron at that point. Like there was a lot of stuff going for them. And it ends up being a pause. And what happens is this pause happens for a huge amount of time. We are talking an hour and a half to 2 hours of pause, which is
monstrous.
To the point where most games would be discontinued and played the other day. Reminder: this is the last game of the day, particularly in Japanese
late.
time. That would have been
Gone midnight.
past midnight. In fact, actually, if Kanatsu last year had been playing in that game, that would have broken Japanese labor laws.
Yeah.
Because there was a worry about that with the Juggernaut match between DFM and Rascal Jester in spring, where if it went to like multiple games, it would have been like, well, or whatever. So that was pretty crazy. And what ended up happening was this bug could not be chrono breaks. Now, we saw this actually not too long ago in the LEC, where there was a bug which could not be chrono breaked. What happens in this situation is clear. It's in the rulebook what happens in terms of if you are at a significant advantage, beyond a certain metric, which I believe is 10,000 gold, certain amount of turrets, certain amount of neutral objects. I can't remember the exact thing, but it is clear within the rulebook. If that is the case, then the game will be just awarded to the team in the lead. You do not play another game, because at that point, the game cannot be remade. You'd have to, because the chrono break cannot go through. So you can't chrono break the game. So you'd have to do a complete fresh draft, complete fresh game. This isn't the case in this game. Even though DFM are one of the... Let's be honest, this game was over. This was very much over. When you know the nature of the compositions, you know the nature of DFM.
11-1 or something
Crazy.
Stupid like that. Multiple objectives.
The only death was
gold
diving between two towers by himself to try and solo kill a Gnar.
Yeah, so there's crazy stuff like this, right? Where you know with the nature of the teams, the nature of the compositions, the way they interact too, effectively Sengoku are down and out. This is not happening. However, basically 2 hours later, they say, well, gotta wrap it up. Sorry, we're gonna have to remake the game because the way that the rulebook is stated is not enough to award them the win. So 2 hours of pause, like DFM have to come out of this and go, well, we got to do this again.
By the way,
and they play
because
another
it's
game.
an official pause, the players are told not to talk to one another for 2 hours.
So the way that ends up working is typically for the first like 5 to 10 minutes, they're told not to talk to each other. In the lead up to it, they can talk a little bit, but basically after a while, they said that they are allowed to talk, but they're not allowed to talk about the game. So they'll have someone listening in. But on the whole, you're not allowed to talk about stuff like that. Perks to talk about in the LEC.
Fundamental.
Like it is a bit tilting, but on the whole, like someone is normal. I mean, particularly with some team like DFM or Sengoku when they got a veteran seat, like they're normally kind of like on the ball with that in terms of the more elderly players, the veteran players. They tend to be like being the captain, which kind of rights the ship and whatever. But what ends up happening is the game is not just remade, it's redrafted. And when the game is redrafted, DFM asks, what's happening with Poppy? Because Poppy is the champion that gets disabled. And they're saying, okay, can we take this champion? And effectively what's happened is they understand that the bug is related to Hex Flash. So any champion that takes Hex Flash can be instantly respawned in this manner. So the question is, and apparently it only affects tournament realm as well, not regular games. So don't try it in your solo queue, I suppose. But
that's why it wasn't disabled in the client.
So they didn't know whether you could take Poppy. You could take Poppy with Hex Flash, whether Poppy was enabled like at all. And effectively they were told, oh, we'll think about it if it happens. So DFM were given very weird information on that based off of what Yahorong was tweeting after the game. Because after the game, Sengoku won. And DFM, like, a load of their players and Kazu were tweeting out, and they were just mental fucking boomed. Because they'd spent, like, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever, right, because of the game beforehand, like, effectively having to play against them, revealing a lot of stuff, lose, and then, like, coming back and having to lose. So that was effectively the whole situation. Sengoku will walk away with the win in the most bizarre circumstance I've ever seen in an LJL regular season. Yeah. It's absolutely absurd.
Yeah. And to clarify a little bit more here as well, like, you have basically had to prep for very different teams across the week. You've done a lot, and then suddenly you've got a redraft out of nowhere. And they came up with a crazy draft. They had a Morgana counter pick to screw over the enemy bot lane. It was absolutely genius. The Morgana destroyed a lot of what was going to happen. It made Poppy's life super difficult. DFM had pulled a massive 4-head draft and then crushed across the board. It was a really, really good draft. Jet was completely out of it on his signature Echo. It was looking really, really good. And then they come into this remake game. And honestly, it's a close back and forth for a bit, and then DFM get an advantage. They get a Baron, and then they lose Soul, and then they lose Elder, and the game is done. And it's a 40-minute game that they lose, and like basically Steel has a bad game is what happens. He's on the Wukong, he dies 8 times, it's not his best game, and that's unusual because he's been pretty consistent this split. He's been one of his best splits of all time. But like it's a back and forth game, and like Udapon and Yahorong and like 6-1 and 2 on the Azir. You've got a 3-2-8 Zeri at 4 items. And basically, because they basically lose one Dragon fight and one Elder fight, they lose games. So it's not even like they get stomped in the next game. It's a close one. But they're doing this while mental boomed, and they come out and go, this is just fucking ridiculous. And you can understand why they're hugely frustrated. And it's like, it is the foibles and the holes between the laws. And I don't get me wrong, I'm sure there are some complaints to be had about how things were handled. I'm sure there'll be some discussions about that. But it's a really, really difficult situation. And what the end result is that while DFM and Sengoku are tied in score, Sengoku now have a 2-1 head-to-head against DFM.
Yeah.
Of 2 games which I have to put asterisks next to, because one is the first game back for DFM after MSI, where Sengoku have been waiting and going, I have been training
and
in
DFM
the darkness
in the draft.
to finally get our vengeance from spring. Finally, our vengeance will be out, and Sengoku come out and absolutely pummel DFM to like, finally, our time has come, and they win that game. And in this game here, where all of this ridiculousness has happened, and it's like, okay, so yes, Sengoku have the head-to-head, but I don't know how much stock I can put into that because of the weirdness of the 2 wins. And it's like, and then this is still a few games you have to play, but coming into things like the Juggernaut match, you might well be seeing Sengoku with side selection despite this weirdness. And at least on paper, that's one thing, but like from the way Sengoku have been playing, they've kind of gone a little off the boil. They've kind of like, they plateaued a bit. I think that's probably the way to put it. Whereas we've seen like DFM were on this incredible tear. It's like, well, maybe they are the better team right now. In fact, honestly, I was becoming pretty convinced of that. And now we're here at this situation.
I'll be honest. This match, more than anything else, especially with the remake and everything, and I posted this in a group chat that we're all in for some of the LJL people, and I just went, this is why I would like us to go back to just a 2-day system where we just have BO3s. Because honestly, I'm starting to think I'd love to see like 2 BO3s across a season for DFM versus Sengoku. I think DFM win that overall.
Yeah, they do, 100%. Like, it would be close. I mean,
it would be, but it'd be competitive.
We're a great team.
And I can see them going 1-1 both times, and then DFM taking the third both times, and it's decisive. But then we have more data, and I mean the triple round robin is great, but then as Sam has put, we've got 2 asterisks. Which is like kind of like, well, that just feels bad. Like, it feels bad.
I walk out of this thinking that DFM are the better team, but it's going to be close. I think when it gets to best of 5s, we're going to see a best of 5 between these 2 teams. There's no way that they end up like dropping out of first and second. Like, even though the Hawks are doing well, that's not going to happen. I think this is really interesting. Effectively seeing a mini best of 2 between these 2 teams. I think that both teams. I think both teams kind of gain from this in some weird way. Like, it shouldn't happen. I think that what is in place in terms of what happens when there is a game-breaking bug, the amount of game-breaking bugs we've had this season, which are chrono game-breaking as well, has been abnormally high, and that's quite worrying, actually. I know that Faker was talking about that after the games.
They've been doing a lot of complaining, and rightly so, honestly speaking.
Yeah. So I am a little bit worried about that. I don't know what's been the cause of that. Apparently, Hexflash is just like a really
buggy
laden thing, which is crazy. But I mean, at the end of the day, we saw that Sengoku can really take it to DFM, and considering they got 0-3 and came back into the finals and like took them to 5 games, and it was a close series in those finals. Yeah, they were the worst team, they were competitive with them. Put it this way, seeing that once again that Sengoku can kind of snipe at DFM in the right scenario, I am quite looking forward to playoffs now. I think that DFM are the better team. Sengoku are not like 0 chance getting title. No, I think they are looking like they are a genuine contender, and this is quite a weird situation to see that crop up.
And you want a fun stat to top out the 2 teams?
Yes.
Yaharong in the LJL has the highest KDA, right? And it's a pretty decent one across let me give the correct stats. Across the 17 games he's played, he's got a KDA of 22.9. All right? 22.9, that's monster, and that's a really just random fun stat, right? It's the highest of any player that's in a minor or major region.
Oh shit.
Like,
really?
He's been really...
And
don't get me wrong,
the next closest person is Balulu, who is 1 game behind at 17 at 17.9. He like it's insane. You know who the next closest player in the LJL is? But I don't actually count them because they haven't played enough games, because my boy got subbed out. Honey, 100% win rate, 19.5, hasn't played a single game since he won 4.
And don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
Like
This also
KDA is
includes
a
all
little bit of a
ERLs
misleading
too.
one.
Yeah, it does.
Like DFM have done a lot of winning, and that helps. So like, and they've only lost
Yaharong
games to
wants number
Sengoku.
1 All-Pro, guys. I
Yeah.
think he saw our All-Pro list.
And yeah, in fairness, Yarong's also had good games into Sengoku, right? So that's the one team they've lost to. So there's that. And honestly, but but there's some serious impressiveness with that as well, because Steel's or DFM have often played to different lanes, right? You know, it's not always through Yaharong. Like, he's often been left on his own. He's often been asked to roam. Like, again, DFM have looked to play through all 3 lanes quite heavily.
I don't know if you caught it, but on the main stream, we brought it on desk for a very short period of time with me, Sam, me, Alex, and Crow. There was a mid-proximity stat. Alex, do you remember this?
I don't know if I saw this.
This was this was a roaming
Like
stat.
a roaming thing, yeah,
so
for a
this
mid
was
lane.
crazy. So I didn't realize this, and this has changed because I haven't like seen all of the crazy stats because we don't have access to like the game API and stuff because we're a third-party broadcast and whatever.
Right.
So what ended up happening is that Yahrong has like the best laning stats, best XP difference, best CS difference. Now, admittedly, DFM send a lot of resources mid. They do roam there, they do and then they do end up ganking there too, which is very different to what happened at MSI. Remember, MSI was not Yahrong's tournament. He was very disconnected from the team. He was very exploitable. But this summer, highest KDA in the freaking world, best laning stats, and also is the mid laner who spends the most time away from his lane. Somehow, he's doing all of this while being everywhere on the map. This is absurd.
That's very impressive.
You're normally seeing impact to one side or the other, especially when we talk about actually how high the level of mid lane has been in the LJL. When you've got Dasher, Jet, a couple of other players who will occasionally pop off here and there. Yeah, Dice has some moments, whatever, right? But like, I'm looking at like this top echelon of mid laners, and for the first time, as much as I thought Jet was the best player in the LJL, and I still think he is up there, Debbie. It's one of the two. But like Yaharong, I actually wonder if I have to start
judging him,
thinking about where Yahrong fits into that list.
Yeah. And again, like, I think part of it as well is like Spring, he was good, but was more of a role player. MSI, he had a bad MSI. I think that's fair to say. We weren't very impressed with Yaharong and MSI. And again, incredibly stacked mid lane talent pool. Holy shit, that was not going to be an easy game for Yaharong, whatever. But even so, not a great MSI. But Summer, clearly the learnings come through, and he has been really, really good. Like, really good. So,
it'll be exciting to see these two teams face off, most likely in the Juggernaut match. But I want to use I want to use that as a quick segue because we have still got 3 days, and if either of these two teams completely capitulate, and the Hawks, who are our next team we'll talk about, keep doing their thing, they could sneak in. I don't think it's going to happen. I completely agree with you, Initialise. It is not that would be a sin to happen, honestly speaking, for the league and the region and everything.
To be something insane happening.
Honey returning and it goes bad. God, that I don't know if I could handle that, honestly speaking, actually. But let's talk about the team that has well and truly, at this point, solidified themselves as the third best team, locked in playoffs already, the only other team outside of the top 2 to lock in playoffs, and they have almost doubled the amount of wins to the next team closest to. They are far closer to the top 2 than the bottom 4. Or what will be the bottom 4, which is crazy.
It's like I want to call back to, just to give ourselves a pat on the back, call back to say,
absolutely,
Hawks should be up in 4th plus. Everyone else in the call, everyone else in was like, you guys are nuts. We had this pre-split narrative meeting with everyone. I remember Middlecop throwing a load of shit at us.
Oh, he did. I've got that recording.
Of course, on the other hand, Rascal Jesters have not done so well, so Hawks have kind of taken the place of Rascal Jesters in some ways, but Hawks have really done a lot of growing this split. And I think the trajectory has been really, really positive. And we saw it start in spring. It's really coming to fruition in summer. And for me, a lot of that is the fact Marble is beginning to come into the player we were hoping he could be. He is another one of those Japanese AD carries who looks really quite special.
But what
I think once they've started working out how to play around bot lane, it's been great.
But what makes him so special is he's very similar to Danny in an extent. He is highly mechanically sound. Like, there is no question this kid has got mechanics. His issue was, similar to other Japanese rookies that have come up through the system recently, their laning phase has been shockingly awful, or maybe the weakest part of their whole game. Marble followed in the steps of Milan. Unlike Milan, though, he only needed a split to really get off that rust and start playing with the team. I would also argue the people that were around Milan at the time were not of the same caliber that Marble has on the Hawks. And also resource-wise and everything else. Hawks are aware that they were throwing money. It was recently came out that the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks company recently lost $1 billion in a day. So Hawks might not be doing so well soon, but that's the general world recession going on. So, I mean, that's where we're at the world.
The Fukuoka, or that SoftBank as a thing, has a few billion spare.
Oh, I'm sure.
They are a very big company. So I think that they're doing, well, we'll see. Anyway, I think they'll be okay for now.
But honestly, Marble has been an incredible player and has well and truly, just to back up your point, has come into their own. They've also got, I don't know what happened, but him and Reiner are actually kind of on the same page a lot of the time now when they go for plays and stuff. It's this kind of just general Reiner and Marble are playing good. Reiner is now roaming and doesn't have to just play Rel anymore, but he can play Rel, but he can also play other stuff. His Rakan is actually looking pretty solid. But then also Topside just wins almost 9 out of 10 matches for them.
Yeah, they've done very well. And to the point where we said, okay, this team is clearly good and they can punish teams below them, but how high can they punch? They take a game off Sengoku. Yeah. They took a game off Sengoku of all teams when we were thinking, look, the only team that's going to take a game off Sengoku or DFM is one of is each other, right? And they take a game off that where Marble gets a pentakill, no less. He gets a pentakill in that game on the Sivir. It's really, really impressive to see that this team is gotten to this point now where they can start being a threat to the top end of the table, and they are probably the dark horse for playoffs. I think it's still pretty heavily something like 60%, 70% DFM, 25% Sengoku.
I put Sengoku higher than 25%.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm kind of coming up with numbers. I still pretty heavily favor DFM, so I'm probably 65% them plus Sengoku with the next best are by far the next best. Hawks are by far the next best after that, and they could be a dark horse for that.
Yeah, so
it's all about CGA, mate. Just flip coins, figure it out.
Right, so I've chimed in on the Hawks. Yeah, so for me, the Hawks, the big thing is their identity as a team is mid jungle's the playmaking. Let's make everyone else's job very simple and very easy to perform. Playing stuff like Sivir for Marble has been so good for him. You don't need to worry about your laning phase. You don't have to worry about a lot of other stuff. The way you position in team fights has always been very well known in terms of Sivir. You know where you should be standing as that champion. And the same goes actually for Kanatsu too on the top side. Just chuck him on Gwen. You just lane. You turn out to team fights and you do stuff. And by simplifying their roles within their team, it allows them to kind of narrow their field of view and just do better at the one thing they need to do. And because Marble and Kanatsu are now significant damage threats, it means that the playmaking of the mid jungle just means more. So this team has found out their identity in a similar way to... You know what? I'm going to say this, and this is going to sound a bit weird because it's not true in the way that they play. In terms of the way they found success, it's very similar to Misfits. Misfits and the LEC are a team which, they needed to find the roles their players were best at, and then decide, you're playing this role. This is what you are doing. And, they managed to simplify it down, get it down to a fine art. You have a couple of champions which allow you to play similar team compositions, and that's what you do. You just play that role in your team, even if the team plays out differently. And yeah, it's a very different team in terms of the way they play, right? They're not all mid-jungle. They've got a lot of stuff on how, say, Neon is playing in that game, right? But, say, for the Hawks, they found the way in the formula which makes them really work in a way that I think is more discovered than any other LJL team. Now, it's not as versatile, and that's what's going to be what holds them back. They are going to still run into a problem of, in a best of 5, there are ways you're probably going to lose that, but they've still found a way to really punch above their weight because everyone is working towards a singular goal, which really, really helps. So I've been very impressed with their growth with that. Yeah.
And look at the AD carries. You mentioned the Sivir, the Tristana as well. Very simple game plan. Take as many plates as possible, be a demolitionist, rotate, put attention towards the bot lane so Tristana can hit the towers. Great. Zeri, survive. We're playing elsewhere for now. Wait for team fights and hit people with your W and your Q. It's not. These aren't necessary. It's not Callistas. It's not Dravens. It's not even some of those hyper carries where there's a finer line for what your role is supposed to be. I think there's some real truth to what Alex is saying there, and it's been really effective for a younger player like Marble. He's been put into positions now where he can succeed and grow, right? And that's been really cool to see. And Then you have the likes of Dasher and Blank as a duo, who are very deadly and can be a little more versatile in how you ask them to play, how you ask them to move around the map. So that's been really cool to see.
I think the Hawks are very much going to be probably ending in third or fourth. It really could flip either way. I can also still see a world where they get into the best of 5 format and they crumble.
Yeah.
Sadly, I can see a world where they just don't have it right, and a team like Rascal Jester will just be like, "Oh, Hawks don't know how to play best of 5. Fantastic." Beautiful. Yeah,
Draft
exactly.
Robot, let's go.
And then they just get brutally stomped in the same fashion 3 times over. And we've seen teams literally do the same thing over and over again, and it just breaks the team. And you go, oh, think DFM Sengoku, ladies and gentlemen. If you know what I'm talking about, you know Trundle into Kindred into back-to-back series. Mental games have been done before, and DFM love to do it. As will Rascal Jester, absolutely. But gentlemen, I think that's the Hawks. I don't think we need to talk more about them because I think it's important. Let's talk about the other 4 teams because they're kind of in a weird pocket together. One of these teams will not make playoffs. And now I want to come to each of you two, and then I'll give my view because I get to ask the question before I give my opinion because that's what I do here. Very good at doing this always. Initialise. Who's the team that's not going to make playoffs?
It is going to be Axes.
Okay. Nymaera, who's not going to make playoffs for you?
Let me figure out strength of schedule quickly. So, Axes are
That's
playing...
a fair shout, actually. I just did that off the top of my head.
So not next game day, but the one after we have Axis Burning Core, day 19.
Oh, lordy lord.
Oh no, Axis are playing Sengoku and DFM to end it out. Holy moly.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think that,
And then Rascal Jester are playing Sengoku, CGA, V3 Burning Core, so they're making it. That's fine, they're safe. CGA, you're playing DFM, Rascal Jester, Hawks, V3. You'll pick up 1 game from that, so that means that you're effectively safe. And then Burning Core are playing V3, Axis, DFM, Rascal Jester. You only need to win versus Axis.
Yeah.
But you're getting a win from V3 as well,
and
probably. So it's probably Axis actually on strength of schedule. I think there are potential ways. Yeah. I do think that, like, at this point, like, Axis lost to V3. If they hadn't lost to them, it gets a lot closer.
Yeah.
Okay, you're probably getting to, like, very even head-to-head
They're
stuff.
6 and 11. They already have a spot above Burning Core. They don't have the head-to-head, which would come to eat them, in all fairness. Burning Core have the head-to-head over them.
Yeah. But now, like, because they lost that game, they're now sat at 5 and 12. They're all even on that, and it's like, sorry, dude. Rough.
Yeah. It probably is between Burning Core and Axis. And, of course, Axis have got a rough schedule, but if they can get that win over Burning Core, and Burning Core only pick up a win, say, over V3, or don't pick up a win, you're good. But that does mean that game between Burning Core and Axis on the, what is that? It's going to be the 12th. So in 3 days.
So, okay, I think I agree with you guys. I think theoretically it's probably Axis, but there's very much a world, and you know what? I would like to live in that world where V3 pick up a second win. And it's like, oh, thank you, V3. You weren't that shit all this time. They beat Burning Core in the match that Burning Core have to win to get playoffs.
That would be hilarious.
I can see it
because
so easily.
If they beat V3, it doesn't matter if they beat Axis or not. They have the head-to-head. So they just win. They just default go through. Their match to win is V3. They lose to V3, Axis win. Oh, it's poetic justice to Burning Core. It's like, win the match you should win. Just do it. I'm going to pick that Burning Core. I'm going to make it just because that makes it fun. That's
fair. I mean, Burning Core have looked not great in a very centric meta, shall we say. There's been some fundamental issues with
I never want to see Yuhi Draven again.
Just fundamental.
Want to see who's Draven again?
Yuhi's Draven. Yeah. I'm sorry, Hina.
Yeah.
The boy's been struggling.
It's not for me. It's the Simon Cowell. It's a no from me.
I don't understand what Burning Core are doing with the spot lane. We've had 4 variants. Fujimoto came back suddenly out of the blue. It's like,
I like him. I like him.
I love Fujimoto, but I don't understand why we've gone through 3 support. We've got to 3 support players.
Oh,
and we've played like 2 different AD carries, and it's just such a weird spot.
Yeah, so I will say, Burning Core Sengoku was actually a very interesting game. The last game that they played, because obviously Sengoku coming in being pretty good, but then Flawless had a decent early game, and it felt like Burning Core had a lot going for them. They managed to get an early kill bot side. It was a Civic Hammer. They had like a group and kill comp, right? Where you've got like team fight everything. You just sit as 5 and you just play like that. But then suddenly you look down and you're like, huh, shouldn't Yuhi be ahead in CS? And he's down 20 CS, even though they've been winning lane. Like they've been pushing into tower, they have a kill in lane, and just somehow Yuhi's just 20 CS down. Like we get to break out this card again. Yuhi's the worst AD carry in the LJL. We don't know why he's here. And
Dress
this is a game
code is
which requires him
substantially better, ladies and gentlemen,
somehow.
on V3. He is substantially better.
Yeah,
And there was
so
a
I look
point
at this and it's
towards
like,
the beginning of
what
this
you,
where Yuki seemed
yeah.
passable. Not anymore. Sorry, Al.
No. I was just like putting in just last point. It's just like he's so core to this composition as well. We are playing Sivir in a group and push DPS comp, and you are like you have an Azir in mid lane, sure. But even with that, the game gets quite close versus Sengoku. It comes down to crazy team fights, and Sengoku are just better late game. They're just way better late game. And particularly Once had a great game on the Viego there. I don't know what happens if Once is not the player he is, and same with like Vital as well, because he ends up, picking up all that CS. And Vital is also very good, right? We probably have maybe the best AD carry, or up there. We have a lot of good AD carries. We have a great AD carry versus Yuhi, and Yuhi is just like not fit for purpose in terms of bot lane centric matters. He's been okay on stuff like Ashe, where you can just leave him alone. He's been okay on stuff on like Aphelios, because that's like his.
That was his one good champion.
That was his choice champion, right?
Yeah.
But in this game, Burning Core are not making playoffs if they have to play bot side and they have to do this. It's just too difficult.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
like
way too difficult.
To put some numbers to this, and again, I don't want to rat on the guy too much. It's not particularly pleasant to kick a guy who's down. But look, the guy is lowest CS per minute of any starting AD carry, lowest damage percentage of any starting AD carry, lowest kill participation of any starting AD carry. Like, it's not pretty to see these numbers, and in a meta where things like Kalista, Draven, Sivir, Aphelios, like a lot of champions that actually are supposed to be high resource, I win the game for you champions. Like, there's a lot, like AD carries are very prominent in competitive play right now, either for very early lane dominance or for I get to 3 items and destroy you all on things like Zeri Sivir. You cannot have a player like this.
Yeah.
If you want to win, and that feels really harsh to say, but he had a good start, a passable start to the split, but it's really fallen off a cliff again.
We continuously ask. I don't understand why this guy keeps getting opportunity after opportunity. I think it's very good that he was given an extra opportunity. You know what? Everyone deserves a second try, even a third try sometimes. But fool me once. I mean, I feel like he's fooled Burning Core countless times now. And the other thing I want to more focus on to end out Burning Core a little bit is in the earlier parts of the split, especially in Spring Split, their top side was just able to kind of get them through a lot of games. They were able to just win through jungle, mid, top side. Ray Farkey would just find an opportunity. Those haven't been coming up anywhere near as often because a lot of other teams just understand how Flawless is going to want to play the jungle part. Ray Farkey can only do so much, as is Dice. The gaps aren't anywhere near as large as once they especially for Ray Farkey in the top lane, the skill gap isn't something that it used to be. I've made this point earlier in the season and it's sadly remaining true. Maybe they'll find an opportunity, but I don't really think that. I think they're probably one of the bottom 3 team, and their score kind of represents that more so for me. They're a step above V3, but that doesn't say much really.
Yeah.
But the other team to talk about, because is the team that you guys actually predicted that probably won't make playoffs. So we might not be talking about them after next podcast episode, remember? Because we're not going to be talking about V3 anymore because they're not making playoffs, so there's no reason to talk about them outside of the matches that they play in next week. Obviously, if they are a complete curveball to Burning Core, we'll talk about that. But Axis are that other team, and Axis, they've had some good moments, but honestly speaking, we all predicted this. Like, we all thought Axis wouldn't come together, sadly. We thought there's a small % chance, but Swangju and Swamp have good moments, but...
Here's a good question, then.
Sure.
Compared to Spring, they were pretty bad in Spring, right?
They were.
But at least they managed to, beat V3. Where are they in terms of our expectations for them? Because actually, I thought they had some pretty okay showings, like in the first round robin in Spring, sweet, they had the smite top strategy, you know, that's cool. They found like a niche in the meta. Maybe they can, again, kind of in a similar way to how Hawks have found their identity. They found their own identity, right? Blah, blah, blah. How do we think they're doing now compared to our expectations back then? Because I feel like they've really struggled to get stuff together. Like, really struggled to get stuff together.
Oh, just hugely. I mean, Ozuka, or previously known as Silent Joker, coming in to replace Dicey for a period of time, just didn't do anything. Honestly, the poor guy was struggling. He was getting pulled around the map far more than anything else. He was late to plays. He was just getting caught out in spots, and it was not something that I ever felt like the team ever got on the same page. And honestly, after the first round robin of Summer Split, I think there's been a pretty dramatic fall off.
I agree. I'm serious. So the game that they lost against V3 as well, it felt like they had ways to win that game as well, which is largely
100%.
like, and like I feel like this is where we have similar issues with like the bottom tier teams, and I still consider Axe as a bottom tier team where they don't actually have understanding of the way that their team comp works because they're not actually sitting down, taking a step back or whatever. Like looking at the bigger picture and saying, this is what happens in 20 minutes. This is how we don't lose or lose the game, right? And they don't have that level of understanding, and I still think that they are now at a point where it's very difficult for them actually. And I had a lot of hope for Axis. I thought that they were quite an innovative team. To see them like run out of creativity sucks. It wouldn't surprise me to see if this roster exploded over off season. I'd imagine it's going to.
Yeah.
I'd imagine I don't see them developing at this point. They're not making playoffs probably. And if they don't make playoffs, I mean, what are you going to do with this team? You're probably just going to explode it, and a lot of players which have hope are not going to go anywhere.
I think more than anything else, which will be really sad for me, is I don't see Megamin getting re-signed.
I think there is a world where someone brings him in as a budget option, but that's what it is.
I think if he might, there's a chance he'll stay around the league, like he might go to V3 Esports or somewhere else. But I don't think we'll see him on Axis ever again.
Yeah, and I think Axis are in a similar position to, like what we've been criticizing V3 for, instead of criticizing what we've seen the flaws in something like V3, right? There's a lot of relatively young players without a lot of successful competitive experience being thrown into the wild badlands that are the LJL. And Megamin is a player who we saw a bit last year and had a start to believe we saw some promise, but couldn't deliver on past a few flashy games. And that's somewhat continued again this split. Like again, we saw the last game he played where he picked Zed, gets a solo kill on the tower. It's stylish as hell, and then later on just walks over a load of people and doesn't pay attention to Walden's eyes. And it's like this dichotomy of a player who is clearly mechanically talented, but who is just not competitively trained properly, I guess, or hasn't picked up the right skill sets and knowledge base.
The thing is, that was clearly, and the thing is, to back up your point, where he is clearly proficient at this. We saw this in summer when Honey. It was said that Honey was making all those shot calls for Axis when they went all the way to third. They ran through everybody else except for Sengoku and was it Rascal Jester or DF Sengoku? No, DFM and X Team. Regardless, when Axis went on that run in 2021, clearly if you tell Megamin what to do, they'll do it, and they'll do it really well, because they would sometimes lose mid gracefully and then rotate and actually get a play and get something else going somebody else, and then the team would momentum in that. He's just not had anybody telling him that, so I do think you are giving some good insight there, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not sure what else to say. Like,
yeah, no.
I think Al's call on the fact it's really sad to see the creativity die a bit. I think there's some truth to that. I think part of it as well is, unfortunately, the meta for bot lane and jungle, where a lot of that creativity was, and alongside some of the top lane stuff, has kind of been taken out. Like, you don't have the same ability to run the smite top laners, and bot lane, you need to be playing certain picks right now, or it's really painful.
But when they had Sol 2, obviously, they played a lot of stuff there, right? For me, I think a top lane when it was there.
Yeah. And obviously, Swamp had some things like the Hecarim and stuff, but again, you don't have as much room to run hard carries in the jungle, because things like Poppy and Wukong and stuff, then Wukong can do some of it, Viego can do some of it, Diana can do some of it, but you need to draft very carefully around some of those picks, Diana in particular. And otherwise, you're looking for big facilitating options, like the Poppy is such high priority for a reason, right? And it's not quite the same as saying, the jungle meta of a few years ago is things like Graves and Kindred, where you could be the person taking over and destroying games. It's not quite the same at the minute anymore.
But
I'm
like
okay
for
with
me,
that.
I question the atmosphere in Axes if this is like what it's come to, because it feels like they're not even trying to do anything crazy. They're playing bog standard and they're just getting slapped by better teams, and that's rough. It's really rough.
Yep. And the V3 was the epitome of all of that, sadly. Moving on, though, to our final two teams, let's talk about the team that none of us expected to actually be sitting here. That's Rascal Jesters more than anything else. Yes, they're in 4th place, but not in the capacity. This was not the season that we expected them to have. Going into these final few games, I do expect them to pick up a few wins and to at least have maybe 4th place, so they have at least side selection in the playoffs. I think that's a viable thing.
Yeah,
for
they
them
don't choose
to
opponent, but they
fight
get
for.
side slots. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. But honestly, I think the biggest story for this team is Soul and Secret just haven't been on it this season for most of it.
Oh, they've been on and off. Like what I'll
They've had
say is
moments.
they've
Super
been.
hot and cold.
I wouldn't say they've been bad. I just think that in 21, I think they were the best duo lane, like together. They're the best
Yeah.
like 2v2 in a lot of ways, right? If you like together as a package, I think they're better than the bot lane in the LJL, especially how important they are. They've just not been that, right?
They've been good.
Now there are a couple of caveats to Rascal Jester. I think they are. If they get stuff together, we've seen some pretty high highs from them as well, where I think in their second game versus DFM, where they played the Nautilus into, I think it was Twitch Yumi or whatever it was. Like, Secret had a great Nautilus game on an individual duo lane kind of basis. They were beating Spawn and Hop. Then mid jungle came down and trashed them or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like, whatever, right? What does it mean if the team's actually just like setting up for it, right?
Yeah, and like
But you can see their prowess there. And in the last game, they pulled out some weird stuff too. I think that they've had good moments, especially in the laning phase.
yeah, and like to step in on specifically that Nautilus game, Secret had a phenomenal game. Hooked loads of times. Twitch didn't die once, or died like only once from all these incredible engages. Like you land everything, and the team's just not there when you need them to be. And like it's all well and good making these incredible individual players be like you find Twitch in the invisibility by flashing over the wall to catch him as he's trying to retreat with the Yumi, but the rest of your team just doesn't notice and is too slow to make the play. And like that kind of disconnect has really hurt them. And part of that for me as well is Recap and Hachimecha. Go on.
No, go ahead. I was about to do the segue for that. I was just trying to come in. Don't worry,
Look
continue.
at the disappointment on his face. Go on. I'm sorry. I pretend I didn't say anything.
No, you've already said it. Can you finish your point?
I'm
No,
sorry.
please.
I don't think Recap and Hachimecha have been doing a lot in general this bit. They've basically felt a bit aimless. Even on things like Skarner, Hachimecha hasn't felt particularly aggressive. We've seen what a good Skarners can do. See what Peanut has done for Genji. Good God, that pick is disgusting in that player's hands right now.
Yeah.
But Recap felt like he hasn't got a particularly active champion pool that he feels comfortable in playmaking on. And Hachimecha's been a little aimless. And we know that Rascal Justice does need this player to be doing things, even if he is not necessarily the statistical best jungler. He's still been an important playmaker and decision maker for the team. And having that not running and not in sync with the bot lane that is having good laning performances, but isn't making the clutch plays happen, the team plays happen, is problematic.
And it just keeps happening over and over, again and again. And I'm sorry, I honestly, me and Alex, after a few games or something happened, we were talking, and I genuinely said, there are occasions. It was something along the lines where I basically was like, I think Megumin is very comparable to Recap at this moment in time. Which was one of those things, and it was a lot earlier in the summer season when Axis was looking a bit better and Rascal Jester were looking a bit more worse overall as a whole. And now I come back to this point, and I go, that's not a good thing to say, because I still actually think that's a fair comparison between the two players. I think Recap has had the higher highs overall, in general, and is a far more solid player to look after. But Megumin has those odd moments where he does just go sicko mode and actually does something cool. I can't think of the last time Recap did anything
It's
cool.
been a while. It's been a while. Because, like, actually, he started the split, he still played a couple of Yone games, and that was fine. But it's not been, like, the recaps on Vega, you're in trouble kind of thing that we saw.
Or in
spring,
Syndra, right?
Yeah, like, particularly, like, the Vega and the Yone with 2 pixels, like, actually, this guy's looking great. And then suddenly, start of summer, his team fight positioning is off. He's exploitable in lane in a way which he was more solid in spring. And yeah, I think you can see differences across the board from Rascal Jester. I think that the only person who's been solid like consistently is Ino. I think Ino's been, but then
Ino's been
Ino,
trying.
when Ino's been given carry, like Ino is not a carry for the team. Even if you give him some like Gangplank, he's not
never been a
carrying
carry
that team.
player.
No, and he's not. I mean, even back in spring when Tryndamere was a big thing, he was given a lot of resources on that champion from time to time. It wasn't really his wheelhouse. He really needed to be something that was like doing secondary stuff, and he was very good at doing that. But like, he's not going to carry your team. You need the rest of your mats to be working out because Ino's not the guy that's going to bail out this team. So yeah, I mean, I think there are sparks there. When it comes to best of fives, I'm really interested in seeing what this team can do, especially if they can adapt on the fly. We know what they can do. We know their ceiling. I don't think they're going to lose in the first round. I can't see that happening. I can't see them losing to a Burning Core or an Axis still. I do think they're a cut above. I think it might be like, I call it 70-30 in their favor, but like, they're still better than the rest of it. And then the question is, with a best of 5 and a couple of games in the regular season, and maybe, wait, there's one more patch change, right? So we're going to 12-14. We're going to 12-14. But like, the question is, can they improve enough to like beat Hawks in the second round?
Alex, no, sir. They don't
worried.
get to pick their opponent.
Yeah.
Hawks are going to pick one of Burning Core or Axis.
Yeah.
So it's CGA. I don't know if I actually comfortably do that, which is a perfect segue, honestly speaking. It's like I plan these things sometimes.
Yeah.
Crest Gaming, the other team, tied at 4th place at the moment, 7 and 10, and they have a better Japanese native mid laner. I will die on this hill right now, because Cocoon, honestly, he is the best mid laner in Academy at the moment. He is playing just around people in circles, and the fact that he's like the main for CGA in their mid, in both Academy and the main roster, and he's about to probably have a good playoffs run, cross fingers touching wood. Oh my god. He's actually going to beat Recap in the 1-in-1. I'm on the Hopium Copium.
He's very involved with the team, right? Like, I still think he's still relatively low in a lot of his numbers, right? Like, I think you can see he's definitely grown. He's definitely found his role within the team. That's been really important. But CG are just fucking weird because it's basically a hybrid and Nap we trust. And if things go wrong, they go real wrong. Like... Because it really is a kind of litmus test. Is Hybrid able to carry? If no, is Nap able to pick up slack? If no, game is doomed. Like, that's kind of it.
Nap's been doing really well, actually.
And again, Nybrid and Hap, the names I have come up with on the fly, like are huge, like, carriers of this team. And like, where's Hybrid's kill participation now? Give me half a second. I think it's going to be super high. Yeah, he is at 80.7% kill participation as an AD carry, which is quite high. He is the second highest in the league behind Sangchu on Axis. Everyone else is very, very, like, you got below that, like, Sol at 76%, and then Marble at 72.5%, and everyone else is somewhere kind of around 70 to 65%. It's like, he's a solid 10 to 15% higher than anybody else in the league. Pretty much. This team needs Hybrid.
Do we think Kassin, for the last year and a half, and this being his 4th split in the LJL, if maybe him as an imported player has maybe ran its limit with CGA?
That's a good question, actually. Good question. Because then the question is, what's the draw, right? What's keeping you there? I mean, Ari has stayed around for 3 years, but he was on the uptick, and he was obviously at the peak, and he was looking to a point to get international. CJ is not going international. Like, ever with this roster. Like, they are peaking out at, like, getting into face the low... Maybe, if they're lucky, facing the loser.
They might lose to Hawks, right?
They'll get to, like... Yeah, like... Maybe if Hawks fall apart and they can't play to their identity in a best of 5, maybe they get 3rd tops. But like that, we've already said the gap between 3rd and 2nd is monstrous right now. You are not getting international with this roster. So then the question is, what's your draw? What's keeping you there? And also what your options are elsewhere. So
yeah, and like Kassin just feels very middle of the pack right now.
Yeah,
and we haven't seen him go towards the things which he was actually like really famous for, which was like the Graves, the Karthus, the hard farm. I will
he was good on Graves
be
too.
the damage carry.
He was,
and like he's only got wins on Wukong and Jin Zhao this split. That's it.
Yikes.
He's lost on Trundle, he's lost on Viego, he's lost on Hecarim. He's only got 5 champions the whole split.
That kind of reminds me of the Boogie thing. Remember when Boogie couldn't find the champions his team needed back in like spring 2020? And he was
Yeah.
like, and he was like, I've got to, like, he was trying to play Trundle when everyone else was like, no, I actually can't do this. And then, like,
Yeah, he
that
was
was
the
that
player.
was really
Remember, they
interesting.
got mental boomed by DFM, wasn't it? Or was it? Yeah, he was. He was the one that got mental boomed and was like, I don't understand what the fuck happening. And then they used that same mental trick against Sengoku, and that was
crazy.
And like, I think Kassin has been fine. He's not been particularly good. He's not been truly awful either. I also don't think this is a particularly good meta. I also think Alex is absolutely right. We've already kind of criticized CJ for lacking go buttons, and things like Jinzhou and Wukong kind of provide that somewhat for you. At least as far as, I mean, the fact I've seen no Poppy in there is a little alarming, but I wonder whether it's banned against them or whether he doesn't play it. But
we'd know if Geo League was updating.
Yes, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
After this, in a moment, sir, in a moment, soon we will talk.
But yeah, I think that's a weird one. I suspect he's not the most expensive import ever, but he is taking up an import slot, and passable is possibly not good enough. And I'm aware maybe if the meta shifts more towards like lethality junglers or like hardcore carry AP stuff, then maybe there's another world where he looks a little bit more sparkly again. But right now he's just kind of there, and I'm not sure whether we provide him the engage role the team kind of desperately needs either. So,
That's where we're at, and I think that's more than enough. We've recapped all of these teams, ladies and gentlemen. Every single team has been covered, but I think it's fair to say we've already said who we're hopeful will make playoffs. The order in which we can conversate about, we can figure it out. 2 for Axis making it out, 1 for Burning Core. The Burning Core is just a devil advocate, just for the sake of it. Hedge bets in every aspect I do. But outside of that, gentlemen, there is another 2 races happening, which we've not talked about a single time. But it is important. We've got the Rookie of the Year race coming up, and we've also going to have our All-Pro teams at the moment. Now, we did, I guess, technically actually allude towards those ones for the All-Pro team, with obviously Yaharong versus Jet and all of that, which will be very exciting to see how voting will go for that. But the other one is going to be Rookie. And this was one of the weird ones that we talked about in the green room. Me and Sam last night or a few nights ago, we were chatting and we were like, is Jet a rookie?
No,
it very much came back conclusively, he is not a rookie.
Rookie,
no,
no.
Yeah, he's played at the top level for like 2 years.
Of course, he changed names and stuff. Like, obviously, he was...
I didn't know the guy, remember? It's not regions I care about. I watch NA, man. I watch NA and LJL, the real content region.
Is in your territory now. Got to pay attention.
Oh, I do now. That's why I asked the question. But sadly,
Don't get me wrong. He was a sub for a while, and then he was on DRX in some weird forming as well. So like he's had some time.
It was
LNG was his big thing. Yeah.
In all fairness, I was also just being lazy and couldn't be bothered to go look at match histories. I was like, I can just ask the question and get corrected. Yay. But when I found that out, I was like, oh, so then it's just marble, right?
If it's for the whole year.
Yeah, it's the whole year. Like, the other ones you could say are, like, maybe Sangchu. All the members of B3 are there, so Washide is maybe a dark horse if you think he's the best player on the Wash
I actually
team.
think Washidai has been more consistent than Marble when you consider his bad games in spring.
Yeah, but I think the glow-up's been really good, whereas Washide have never really hit the heights I was hoping for him either.
Could he ever hit those heights?
Yeah.
I can't think of anyone else I'd put in, unless like we have a
Does
playoff
Harp
one where
count?
Kaken does. No, he was KT Rolster last
Rolster, yeah, he was on Rolster. Because I was just checking, like, I wasn't sure whether because there is a limit for because you can have played in a major region, but it has to be a certain limit of games. So he was a sub for KT Rolster. He wasn't. He was a start.
He did play starting in summer. Yeah.
No, he was a sub, so he was in there as one of their subs.
But he played on stage. He played on stage.
Yes, he did. So my question is, how many games did he play, and was it enough?
I consider Harp not a rookie, not a true rookie.
Okay.
Oh yeah, Hart played on the same team as Blank in that KT roster. That was
and 5 Kids, yeah.
Oh god,
who they met at MSI.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what a weird time to be alive.
I know, right? Crazy.
I'm gonna double check how many games he played because I think there is a cutoff because he was strictly a
Okay,
sub.
well, I don't consider him a rookie.
Anyway, Marble, and then it kind of goes. Well, it's
And
Kakun if CJ have an
Kakun
insane.
if they have a good playoffs.
Actually, no, because it's only regular season. Playoffs does not count for rookie of the year or rookie of the split.
Well, no,
It gets cut off.
well, this is what I'm saying. This is rookie of the year, right? So if we're doing it for the year, I'm considering the whole year. So we get to make we get to make the rules. So
are we including playoffs or are we not including
yes,
playoffs?
I am.
You want to include? So we're going to do our voting for rookie after playoffs then. We have to for that then.
Depending on how far the teams go, but like, because if we're doing it for the whole year, that
because
includes
voting
spring
for All
playoffs.
Pro happens at the end of the summer season.
Yes, okay, but we get to make the rules, right? But if we're doing it for the whole year and it's not just the split, then then obviously spring playoffs comes into that.
I'm just confirming, mate, when we want to vote. I'm going to be organising all the voting, so I want to.
If it's for the whole year, you have to include this playoffs because you've already included spring playoffs. So like taking into account one but not the other is super weird. You have to do that.
Which is like Cancun. He's going to need to have an insane playoffs run. Included in that because he's just not played for most of it. And I can't include his academy stuff because that's a different thing. That's a different league entirely. Outside of that, are All Pro teams mostly going to look like mostly DFM, Sengoku, and Hawk players? Are there any players that aren't in the top 3 teams that you guys are probably going to be considering voting for an All Pro team? Even third All Pro?
Hybrid potentially. Hybrid's very good. I don't know whether he'd top anyone else, like top any other great AD carries, but yeah, like Hybrid's good. Outside of that.
Maybe Nap to an extent, honestly.
Nap's also.
I'm not super high on Paz still.
So, yeah. It's obviously it's going to be heavy, but Nap might get second for me. Yeah.
I'll double check this, but at least by the rules the LEC use, Harp would be eligible to be a rookie.
Fuck off.
Okay.
So he has played less than 50% of a game, or 50% or less than of a world's qualifying region. He did not play 50% of the games in.
We will need to discuss behind closed doors.
He played about 6 matches. Where he was in for but he was a substitute at that time. So at least as far as I can tell, and again, match history is a little hard to check at the minute. So that's the case. Summer of 2021, he had some time. He had some time in summer of 2021 when he was not.
In 21, he played 17 games.
Yeah, which is when there's best of 3s involved. So.
Oh no, that's not right. Actually, that was spring.
We will figure out our parameters, ladies and gentlemen, when we post our one as well. We might have a little photo clarifying that because we'll probably also do our overall player of the year or something because we've done stuff like that in the past. I'm pretty sure. So that'll be a fun thing to do, especially if maybe we have to give Yaharon player of the year, but we give Jet the actual overall All-Pro mid just for fucking with him. Just to jab that in. As he goes to Worlds. So it's like, hey, mate, you got the real prize here. Jet didn't get to go to Worlds. But let's talk about the thing that we have been talking about but not actually covering in depth. There's been some big news in the League of Legends world, but not actually League of Legends eSport playing. It's the wiki. Sam, do you mind covering this?
Yeah, so to explain,
why your match histories won't be updating, why things won't work. Oracle Elixir currently has no match history coming through at the moment. Really?
So Leaguepedia, which is the match history website for competitive LoL, the one, or just for LoL in general, for any esports with LoL, all of the match histories, all of the stats, and particularly things like scoreboards are stored on that website. It's really important because you have to remember Riot discontinued keeping their own match history, so there are no official Riot-accredited match histories. Now, the person that was basically involved with the coding and building Leaguepedia, their main dev, was someone called River or Raingold River on Twitter. Raingold might be Rheingold, I'm not quite sure how you pronounce that. Either way, they Leaguepedia exercised their right to discontinue her contract, and basically within 2 weeks, things like scoreboards and match histories have not been updated in League of Legends, and so there is just no match histories out there. The best you're getting is GOL, which is a very awkward website to use for match history tracking. Doesn't do that particularly well, or scoreboard tracking especially well. And Oracle's Elixir, as you said, piggybacked off a lot of the same stats. And as a result, Leaguepedia is on fire and non-functional. It is a critical part of anybody who is involved in Pro LoL tracking what the hell's going on. Like, it's a huge deal.
Yeah, so something that was tweeted out 20 minutes ago, because there was a tweet which Monty made, and but a couple of us responded to it. So Playworth, who's been a big Leaguepedia like helper / worker, and
Thank
then
you,
also,
Emma, by the way.
Yeah, and that they were also one of the very first people that stopped in with us actually when we started out a broadcast.
She knew us like instantly as
really
well.
cool.
Like it's
But,
crazy how on the finger.
So from
of
what
the
they were
pulse she is.
saying, like effectively with River gone, we simply cannot add the scoreboards as the parser was heard doing. Because effectively what you do is like you put it into a system, and then the system then like adds it so all the links are in the correct place and whatever. Because it's a very tightly knit like web of things, that website, which is also why it's great for jumping between different sites. It's part of it, right? But without River there, like they literally cannot add these scoreboards and the match histories because that was all River. Because she was the person that like knew how to do that stuff.
She
So
developed it. She built it. Like
the functionality is dead. The functionality is dead now.
It doesn't work.
now this wouldn't obviously be a huge big deal, but I am going to publicly use this as my spot to do this. This is where we should have lolesports.com step in and carry the weight.
That or Riot needs to pay for a actual wiki that isn't attached to fandom, because fandom have done this before with other systems. And
Yes, I'm familiar.
and you know, doing so like there's a reason why things like the Dark Souls wikis and are done by Fextra Life, for example, and same with Elden Ring. They are a separate system for good reason. And this is kind of proving why that's a risky thing to put your League content being done kind of without oversight from your official developer on a separate system, right? As a third party system. Eventually, you know, the third party doesn't have to keep doing it forever, and suddenly there's no system. So this is the problem with having no match histories now, and Riot are kind of like a bit screwed in the fact that they don't have match histories anywhere, and neither does anybody else. So at the minute, the only website that has any match history tracking is Game of Legends. So there are some stuff on Game of Legends. It's not that easy to pass, but they are there.
And the only
it's not as
reason we're
interconnected. It's not as interconnected. It's very good for the current split, but it's not interconnected in terms of a historical context and looking for wider impact of things.
And just to make it clear for ladies and gentlemen out there, the only reason we are recommending Game of Legends is because we have used them for several years at this point, and they are the one that we are familiar with using. We do not want to start shouting out other websites that might be up to date, but we don't actively use. So if there are, that'd be great. Let us know. Hit us up on Twitter. We would love to know if there are other resources out there. But at this moment in time, the only one we're comfortable actually shouting out is Game of Legends because they're really useful and they actually have all the up-to-date data still, even if it is janky, as my two co-hosts have very made clear to you all. And obviously, at the end of the day, the saddest part of all of this is we lost a fantastic community member, and I feel really sorry for River, and hopefully they can get back on their feet and continue doing what they love, whatever that may be. But that was a huge thing, and hopefully some form of positive or something will come out of it, because like the fail point system, as you mentioned in Initialise, this has been the ultimate issue, which has become a glaring problem because Riot had stopped that match history because of all that other stuff. Data is just going to get lost into the ether potentially, which is unfathomable. I'm sorry, we're playing an internet game where players are literally playing remotely, and I'm sorry, we can't capture the data from the game and have it in a public sense.
Well, we could, and they just didn't want to do it anymore. for various reasons. I mean, like, it's really frustrating. It makes our lives like. I'm aware we're quite a niche, right? That we are active esports commentators and content creators, right? There's not that big a. It's not that big a. What's the word? Like a demand. We are a particularly niche demand in terms of what we want from stuff, but this was our source. It was critical for prepping for leagues, critical for getting yourself ready for stuff, and this is really, really hard to deal with.
And what I'm sad for is the history will get lost potentially.
That's what I was just about to say, actually. Like, regardless of what this is, like if you want to look at what an actual broadcaster does and what any content surrounding this league is, it has to be set within context, right? Because if you're saying this guy's the best NA player ever, what if you don't know about the other NA players because you've not actually watched stuff? And trolling through VODs for that stuff when you don't have the context for anything is awful. Now, all of us but Sam have worked quite. Yeah, so Lexi and I have worked in the uni scene in the UK for quite a bit, right? One of the big problems we had with that is it will never grow if you don't have any archiving and you don't have any ability to say, this person was great back then, look at this, blah, blah, blah. Because if you don't have any grounding for things, things just mean less. They are less important, right? Where you can't point at something and say, this was a moment in time that was very important. This person back in was the best in the game or whatever, right? So a lot of content, pretty much everything you see on your screens is put in by creatives, even if it is under the guise of LEC or LCS. Now, everyone I know at LEC uses Leaguepedia. Everyone I know who on LCS uses Leaguepedia. Yeah, there are other sites that we use for different stats, and GOL is really useful, as we were saying, in terms of other things, but it just doesn't have that interconnected context. You are not going to get the same storylines from all the big broadcasts. You're not going to know the same about the players. You're not going to know the same about the game. You're not going to know the same about all of your regions if this shit's not there to underpin it. It is hugely important. By losing it, you are cutting off the feet of what is an incredible tapestry of history.
Oh, Riot, if you're hearing this. LoL Esports, if you'd like some ideas, you want a consultant, I'm open. Trust me, I've written a lot about this that's just never really come out, but I thought a lot about LoL Esports. It could be the best website for League of Legends Esports. It could. Balls in your court. Well and truly now, because if you don't, then actual things are going to get lost and it's going to be awful, and everyone's going to have to rely on Game of Legends, which is
It's not that site is for granular stats.
that website is for people like us.
Yeah,
the wiki is for anybody where they could just spend an evening just going, oh, I didn't know this about
history. Yeah.
Yeah, like if someone wanted to look up information about 365, and like imagine if like a year of his career just gets eliminated, you're just gonna be like, I don't know how good this guy was.
Yeah.
Was he just memes all the time? But hey ho. What is that? Gentlemen, am I missing anything that we haven't yet covered that we said we would cover? I've been trying to keep us a bit on a thing, allow a tangent to happen, but is that everything? Have we gone through everything?
Pretty much.
That's everything I want to talk about, yeah.
Well, there is one last topic I would like to cover, and it's just because it's popped into my head, and it's something that we said we would talk about on the podcast, but we haven't. And this is something, because his name was brought up very momentarily by you, Alex. This is Monte Cristo. Now, him and Thorin, about 3.5 to 4 weeks ago, they were discussing that potentially there are rumblings, there are rumors going around, there are floating. People are saying things. There's no evidence. I know the confused face, but you know where I'm going with this.
I know, yeah.
There is a chance that potentially minor regions as a whole will cease to exist in a residential capacity for major regions, meaning that you could technically import the whole of DFM with 2 imports and just slot them into the LCS. Just have them play. Now, for the major regions overall, this would improve the overall level of play because the players would be better. You'd have deep history to go through and grab these players from. So from a major region perspective,
their scouting's good, but
well, I mean that comes onto the broadcast and contacting people like us, and we can actually give them that history and make it good. Or hey, Riot, I'd actually love the LCS if you're gonna bring in Japanese players. Just hire me, just pay me. I'll come. I'll be on the big screen. I'll yell at Dash. And then he can yell at me and I can learn stuff. I'd love to learn from Dash. I am going on a tangent about me and loving Dash at this point. But that's beside the point, because the bigger issue here is if you take the top talent from the LJL, this region dies.
Yeah, pretty heavily. Like I think this is also like...
And that's just our region.
Yeah, I mean, this is also part of the problem with having a problem. It's one of the flaws, I guess, of having a system where you have geo-locked leagues, right? Where you are basically you have a European
that terminology,
league, an LJL, and a Japanese league, and rather than being like an open circuit or whatever. And there are benefits to that as well in terms of like growing homegrown fans and making sure talent comes up from particular areas, and you're not completely like just washed with the best players from another region, and you never get the chance. And there were some issues with StarCraft, right, with everybody just being like the best Korean players and just getting important onto teams and stuff, and like my God, there's no way to make anything work if you're
Unless
not.
you were Scarlet for a short period
Yeah,
of time,
and
and you
there
could actually somehow beat everybody. But
there wasn't like this Finnish guy or whatever who was really good.
oh yeah, he came along. Yeah.
Yeah, like towards the end, like that was, there are issues there. But then you end up in a situation where, like, okay, so you unlock these leagues, but then there's no there's no way for them to compete as part of their region because there's no like international circuit to go into. So they just go, well, screw it. I guess we go to one of these other Geolock League where there's more money and stuff. And as a result, you end up with a brain drain, right? And in some ways, that's cool for the bigger regions and potentially cool for the ecosystem as a whole. But it will kill your other minor regions, and it makes it very hard to then for basically after the drain has happened, it makes it very hard to
build that again. You can't build that again.
Yeah, build up the things that happen afterwards, and it also means that players coming afterwards, like, how do you prove you're worthy of being imported when there's nowhere really to prove you're good?
Yep.
And that's problematic as well. So like, I can see why Riot might want to do it, and it might honestly be a good thing for a number of these other regions in the ecosystem, and the overall competitiveness and ecosystem of League of Legends as a whole. But it will come at the cost with the way systems work by unlocking but like refusing to put anything in place in others, or unlocking major regions to go into these smaller regions as a result. Like partial unlocking basically means those regions no longer have a reason to draw talent to them as much.
I think at that point, you actually remove minor regions from Worlds, and I think you have them in their own separate circuit, because actually at that point you're not going to have relevant minor region teams. Because they are often defined by one or two great players on a minor region team. Even if it is a multi-year plan, you're still going to largely have like one or two players which will like define that team, or in fact define that region. Say if Ebby had been sniped out of LJL, who defines the LJL?
Ray Farky?
Yeah, but like there are other players who are good, right? But Ebby is like region defining.
Yes,
and there are other players who do this. Say like Levi from the VCS. Now, VCS is a different state because they're so full of talent, right? I don't think it's a fair comparison.
And there is a slight thing to say about this, because I love that you brought that up, Alex. VCS and PCS potentially could operate still in the major region capacity. They would get kind of brought in. There'd be 6 major regions. So you could see a full LJL team going into PCS or going into VCS, for instance.
Yeah, and I think that's
as an idea.
DFM playing in VCS would be really fun for me, actually.
I mean, like, you could just have a minor region rumble. Just, like, have it as you said, like, here we go. All right, let's make rather than, like, just a play-in store, make it, like, a full, like, a permanent
I think you just have a secondary system at that point.
Yeah, have a secondary system with a circuit.
You have a secondary system, and just be like, well, this gives you more international tournaments throughout the year. It allows you to basically run a second international calendar. But then the problem is, would a league player go into a minor region know it has basically no chance at Worlds, or isn't connected to Worlds?
Yeah,
I don't know if they would. I don't know if they would. But I don't think you're going to have relevant teams. You're in this shitty scenario where Riot has said, run rule for me, but not for thee. And it means that minor regions are then like going to get this drain where effectively like you're taking the nutrients out of the bloody soil. Like nothing's going to grow there. Maybe it's good for the initial people who are involved because they get to show their stuff somewhere else. But you at that point, development is gone. You need some seriously motivated teams and individuals to build that up, and that's not going to happen effectively for most regions, or it'll happen for one team in a couple of regions each year. And at that point, you're going to have like a couple of individuals, like maybe a Japanese player makes it onto an LCS roster or onto a PCS roster or wherever. But like at that point, you are saying you are losing 3-4 years of development in every region, in the minor regions, and I think that you are capsizing the international calendar.
So yeah,
it is going to be absolutely disastrous.
Yeah. So unless you immediately come in with a secondary system, as I was saying, that look, okay, so you have like almost like a few EU masters, and basically what you do, like a few like international EU masters between the minor regions, basically kind of vibe, where then effectively what you do is you have the minor regions be in effect another major region that gets seeded straight into the main stages, right? So you basically have like VCS, DFM and GAM and whoever else playing off in a big sort of international rumble, like on a greater scale than something like play-ins, which just
I think you have to remove VCS, PCS from that.
Exactly.
I think VCS, PCS they're not minor regions. I keep saying this. They're not minor regions.
No, that's true. That's fair. That's fair.
I actually think there is a small way that this actually works out as a good thing for LJL, right? I have the opinion, or rather hot take, that LCK is low-key killing its rookie system. It's actually doing predatory stuff at the moment. Did you see that recent video that they came out with contracts and how much control and shit? So, hey, little rookie coming up, you think you might be hot shit? Do what Arya did. Come in, blow up the LJL, destroy everything, be a double, triple Korean team, and then when you're proven, you didn't have to sign yourself to a Korean contract, and the LJL wants to probably keep existing and actually having good representation, at least as a region, so they'll be more than happy to sign Korean talent. And by the way, Korean players are actually kind of liked now in the LJL. There's far less harbor of resentment or anything now. It's mean 3 Koreans in a lot of these message boards I keep seeing, so it's like, hey, it's an option, and it means our region, if every team starts getting 2 to 3 Koreans, maybe we just become LCK light that is better value for money, potentially, and you can get paid more. You just don't debut in Korea, which is a big important thing, as we saw for Arya when he went over. He was like, I haven't made it till I play in the LCK. And we've all experienced what happened there. That's my small thing. I'm like, maybe it could work out for LJL, but as a whole, I'm like, it's not going to be a good thing. So, yeah.
Wow. Lots of it. Look, we basically said this before. Like the LGL dies probably on a financial level. Actually, like if this shit goes too deep. Like I think you're going to see a lot of regions fold if that happens. I think it's very, very dangerous.
No, look at the LCO over the last year, right?
And like the support structures are not there to develop talent if you're starting to like gut it. So good luck with that.
And on that bombshell, because there's not really a better way of summing that up, that's going to be the podcast, gentlemen. It's been a few weeks. We'll be back again to recap the full of just the LJL season. Start handing out awards and everything. It'll be about that time to do that, as well as also make sure, well, honestly speaking, expectations for playoffs and start making our predictions for playoffs and everything. But between now and then, Initialise. Sir, mate, what are you going to be getting up to? What have you got to play?
I am going to be doing a lot of NLC with playoffs and stuff coming up. There's a couple other really cool projects which
Check your Twitter.
I may or may not be on, depending on some contract stuff, which would be really, really cool. In potentially not even League of Legends, some other games, which would be really exciting. So we'll keep our eyes on that. And yeah, got some other stuff, maybe some voiceover work as well on some cool stuff. So like lots of fun little projects I'm quite excited to get involved with. So stay tuned. I'll throw them out there. I am ungodly busy, but that's quite good news for me and my bank account, so I'm okay with that.
That's good to hear, mate. Nymaera! Sir! What's your next week looking like?
Well, I'm going to be on the LEC this weekend. I'm covering the last 3 games on Sunday, so the last games of the regular split, so that'll be really fun. That's going to be another LEC shift, which is obviously very enjoyable, and yeah, getting to be on cast with, it's really, really fun. And plus, like, I've actually not had the back half of the day yet in LEC, so I'm very much looking forward to that.
Oh, have you always only done the beginning?
Yeah, well, those are typically the less important games.
That's fair.
As kind of like a newer person coming in, they don't necessarily hand you the reins. They don't give you the big guns like straight off the bat. Which is understandable, right? But
wait, what do you mean? When I come in, I'm gonna have to maybe host some nothing games on the desk.
Well, no, if you're hosting, you're there for the whole day.
Yeah, that whole weekend.
So I gotta be big boy. Okay.
Yeah, so if you're casting, you're on for like the first 2 normally, or the last 3. That tends to be the way it works. But yeah, so last day of the split, I'll be there. We'll see if the game's been nothing or everything. It's just the way that it goes. And yeah, so that's that. I'm gonna be on NLC tomorrow, so we'll be there.
With me.
I'll be on with you. Yes, that'll be fun. And then I'll be around a little bit more elsewhere. Apart from that, don't know. Doing a lot of admin. Maybe getting back to streaming. We'll see. But yeah, that's my plans.
Spicy.
Plans. Yeah.
Good. Obviously, ending out the season of LJL this week. I'll be helping out with broadcasty stuff. I've put myself down for some stuff, even though I do the schedules, so that's crazy. Oh, that's the veil being lifted there. It's like, who gets to decide? Oh, Lexi, because he's on it. That seems like a bit of nepotism. It is. Well done, ladies and gentlemen. People can call me out in the crew. They know they can, so at least they know that much. Outside of that, I'm going to be writing something. Sam's going to be probably told to read through it. It's over 25 pages.
Okay, right.
I've written half a dissertation. It's over 5,000 words already. I'm very passionate about Wizards of the Coast and Magic the Gathering. Could you believe that?
I can.
Could you?
Very much, Lexi.
It has ballooned far larger than I wanted it to be, but I'm just currently doing my my passion project. Outside of that, I want to do some stuff. So expect a tweet video thing, and I would appreciate the ladies and gentlemen out there retweeting it and liking it, because signal boosting is really important in this industry and everything. So yeah, I haven't also done a big signal boost post for a really long time, outside of when I did the Kazu interview, just because that was Coach Kazu. So thank you, Kazu. But yeah, it'd be really cool. But other than that, I can't really say too much more because I've got NDAs and other things I can't say. Just limbo, ladies and gentlemen. But great game, actually. Really enjoyed it. Fantastic game. Scared me the first few times I played it. That spider terrified me. I've got vague, like, I don't like spiders. Are you guys good with spiders or not? Well, I know Sam is because he plays Elite.
I'm fantastic with spiders, but
Sam is awful with spiders, actually.
Okay, so fun story. Right, before
I'll give
the story to end this.
So end us out, yeah.
Here's a story, chat and listeners and viewers, wherever you may be. I am not great with spiders. Spiders, however, are great with me, and they appear to turn up in or around my person in the most horrifying ways possible. So I've had them crawl out of my pillowcase over my face, like from inside and out, and then I throw it out the window, and another one crawls out the next night. I've had open a book down the middle of the page. I've had shoes. I've had hair. One dropped out of a doorway and out of my hair, and I thought Alex was joking about it being in my hair, and then my granddad went, "Oh lol, no he's not," and he had to grab like a bat one off my head.
Yeah.
And the
your grandfather move to do, just grab us.
The absolute worst one. I was on a speedboat in Vietnam in the middle of a fucking river. It's the Mekong Delta. It is a huge, like, wide ass river. And through the window of this sort of transport speedboat comes a spider. It's a bright red jumping spider that begins to bounce around my body and tries to go down my shorts. And I am basically doing this insane contortionist dance that Beautiful Crow, I'm sure, would be proud of. Like, backhand this bastard out of the window of this speedboat. And I'm there like, oh my god, why me? Why does this happen? And so, for whatever reason, I am the king of spiders, and I'm really fucking tired of it. It's not for me.
In terms of like a pragmatic level, like, none of my family is good with anything insects or spider related, so I became the person who had to deal with it because someone did. So I just tend to. I'm okay with it now. I'm just like, why?
Like, I don't mind it as long as they're not touching me. That's the thing. Like, I put them in a glass with a paper underneath and fine. Like,
but
bigger
the
they
thing
are,
is, when you freak out when they're touching you, they get scared. So if you freak out, that's actually not helping you. Being calm is the best defense against them.
It's an involuntary reaction for me to sort of like spaz out. It's not great.
Spiders are bros when they stay in the corner, ladies and gentlemen. But when they touch you, you freak out. We all freak out. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening and or watching. This has been episode 16, 13, I don't know, season 3, episode 16. Thank you for listening or watching. Subscribe, like, do all that good stuff. Thank you, John. Bye-bye.
Bye.